Hello everyone, I'm Kate with Nitty Gritty Pilates, and I'm just going to bring you a little video about neutral spine. So I've done a couple of different pieces, like really short videos about neutral spine on TikTok and in my Mighty Network, the Nitty Gritty Pilates, and on Instagram and stuff like that. Just little tidbits here and there describing what it is and things like that. But this video is just going to be a comprehensive view of what I know right now about neutral spine, and hopefully that will help you kind of finding that very incredibly important spinal position for you. So first of all, neutral spine is the position in which your spine is the most decompressed. So it doesn't have, it has the least amount of stress on the discs in between each vertebra. Right, so that's basically your home base, and that's actually how Dr. Stuart McGill describes it in his book, The Back Mechanic. I really love that description of it, so I stole it and I'm telling it to you. So essentially, the back, when it's in its natural or neutral state, again, that's also quoting Dr. Stuart McGill. Your spine has three different curvatures, right? So you have a lordosis in the cervical spine, which means that you have a curvature sort of toward the anterior portion of the body. You have a kyphosis in the thoracic spine. So you have, a curvature where the apex is going more towards the posterior side of the body. And again, a lordosis in the lumbar spine or your lower back, where the apex again is going toward the anterior portion of the body. So you want those curves in the spine to a point, right? If you hear someone say, thoracic kyphosis or lumbar lordosis, they're really talking about an over lordosis or over kyphosis, right? So they're talking about an exaggerated curvature in those portions of the spine. The spine, and the truth of the matter is that the neutral spine is supposed to have those curvatures to a degree. Right. So it's just a matter of finding what degree, works for your body and what degree is true to your sort of your spinal makeup. Right. So I'm going to attempt to help you find the neutral spine that's right for you. I know a couple of different tactics so that you can find that. The reason I'm doing an entire video on neutral spine is just because it's so incredibly important, like I said before, especially for your Pilates practice. It's so incredibly important to know where neutral spine is in all different positions, so including lying on your side, standing up straight, sitting up straight, all that kind of thing. You definitely need to know where to locate that. It's also vitally important for your life. Oftentimes we're in seated posture, and you want to be able to find your neutral spine while in a seated posture. So again, very important. But this is just going to be a basic sort of tutorial onto how to find your neutral spine, specifically lying down or in sort of a quadruped position. So we'll start with the first general tactic here, where we're going to find our triangle with the hands, and we're going to move our pelvis and sort of align our pelvis in a neutral position. So first, you're going to take the heels of your hands. You're going to place them on the your hip bones here, your ASIS bones, your anterior superior iliac spine. So these two hip bones right here. Then you're going to drape your pointer fingers down towards your pubic bone to create a triangle, right? So we have a triangle. I've also heard it described as a diamond, where you have the thumbs go up toward the belly button and the pointer fingers down. So you can also do the diamond method or the triangle. I prefer to talk about the triangle, so I will. So from here, you have your pelvis, and you want to really think about where those bones are in space. So, your fingertips, again, are on your pubic bone, and you have your heels of the hands on your hip bones to create that triangle. Now, you're going to use your triangle while you're lying down. So you're going to lie all the way down onto your mat or onto your ground or onto the ground, but you want it to be a hard surface. So try not to do this on a couch or a bed or anything like that. You're probably not going to find the right position unless you have some something hard to kind of press up against here. All right, so from here, you're going to place the heels of your hands on your hip bones, drape your pointer finger down towards your pubic bone to create that triangle here. Good. So I'll move my legs a little bit so you can see. Now, you want to sort of move that triangle so that those 3 points of the pelvis are all level with each other and parallel to the ceiling. Right. So when you're in this position, that's probably going to put you in a space where you have a small curvature in the low back. Again, like I was describing when I was describing neutral spine, this is normal. You want to have a small low back curvature. A lot of times in a bunch of different exercise types, we are often tucked under and in this sort of flex position. You want to make sure that this is not where you are in a lot of exercises in Pilates, okay? So you want to really find your neutral place, have that small low back curvature. The back ribs are heavy and the sacrum is heavy. So you want to find the sacrum as opposed to the tailbone. And a lot of times as a Pilates instructor, we will instruct, make sure your tailbone is heavy, and we'll talk about the tailbone. Really, we want you to find your sacrum, the flat portion of the back of the pelvis. The tailbone is usually a little bit more forward. So if you're really pressing the tailbone down, you're going to be in a little bit more of an arch than is neutral. And that might kind of, not be a great position for you. So you want to make sure that you're feeling the flat portion of the back of the pelvis onto the mat. You're feeling balance on either side of your hips here. Your lower abdominals will draw in and up without tucking the tail under, and I can talk about that forever. So let's not even get into it. And then you want to feel almost a little bit of either relief, depending on, your sort of day-to-day biomechanics, or you might feel nothing at all. But either way, you don't want to feel a pinching or a pain of any sort. It should be something that feels nice or nothing. All right, so that's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it is to, if you don't have, great access to your hip bones, or you have a really narrow hip bone or something like that, or you have a protruding pubic bone, something like that. There's a bunch of different sort of structural reasons why this method wouldn't work for you. You can take your hands underneath the small of your back and then find your sacrum down onto the mat here. And you want to make sure that you're not going so far into the tailbone region, right? So you don't want to feel that tailbone. You want to have the flat portion of the back of the pelvis down onto the mat, the back of your rib cage heavy on the mat on the other side. And then you may be giving a little bit of give from your low back sort of into your hands here, just a tiny bit. So you're not going to press down into them. That's going to tuck the tail. You want to make sure you just have just a tiny bit of sort of pressure from the low back. Now, it's a little bit more of a vague description on my part, but if you're kind of following along with me and you're sort of trying to find that position, you should be able to find a place where you're just sort of rested on the flat portion of the back of the pelvis. And again, you should feel a little bit of relief or nothing at all when you're in that position. You can also take that up a notch here and use a folded bath towel here that I've sort of scrunched up into sort of like a little sushi roll type thing. And you're going to place this underneath the small of your back, which is going to be right underneath the 12th rib. So right where your rib cage ends in the back, in your back here, that's where the towel is going to start. So it's not going to be lower down underneath your pelvis. You want it to be up higher, right underneath the 12th rib. Now, in that position, you might need to adjust the height of your roll. So if it's too low, you're going to find yourself in a little bit of a tuck if you're trying to give a little bit of lift from the lower abs into your towel. You want to make sure that you're on the back of the pelvis. So like I've said a couple of times now, you want to make sure that you're on the flat portion of the back of the pelvis, that you're not on the tailbone, and that you're not behind the tailbone either. So you want to make sure that you're just sort of balanced there. If you found that right place, you can adjust your towel, you can adjust the height, you can adjust the roll, whatever you need to do. That's always a good sort of tactile cue for you while you're still trying to locate that neutral spine position. You can do a lot of the, ab series and things like that in Pilates with your towel underneath the small of the back, especially if you're having a hard time kind of finding that right curvature for you and maintaining it. But I definitely wouldn't suggest this as a long-term solution. You definitely want to be able to find neutral spine in your own body without having the tactile cue. But I'd say for sure, do some warm-ups, do a couple of things with the towel underneath just to get a feel for how your muscles are going to work with the bones in this position. And then you can always take it away and you have something to kind of reference. Now from here, you're going to take, we'll take the towel out. I'll show you another way. So if none of those three ways have worked thus far, You can also find your neutral by doing a little cat-cow moving through the spine. And again, we're in a different position here against, against the weight of gravity here. So it might feel a little bit different than normal. And it's good to find your neutral spine in this position anyway. So from here, you're going to go through a couple of cat-cows before we find that neutral. So you're going to drop the belly down, shoulders back, chin up. Then we're going to tuck the tail under, scoop the abs, pressing down and back with the knees, pressing down and forward with the heels of the hands, really squeezing those glutes, tucking the tail under. Then we're going to find our neutral spine from here. So it's going to be about halfway between both of those. Now, when we're working against gravity in this way, your neutral spine is going to look almost like a straight spine, like a straight back. But you're going to feel that it's not actually completely straight. So if I'm completely straight, like I'm pressing down into the ground, that's going to look more like this in this position, as opposed to my neutral, which is going to look a little bit more like this, where I do have a little bit of that curve in the low back. I have a little bit of that curve in the upper back, and my neck is nice and straight, which does actually have a little bit of a curve. So and I've heard in classical Pilates, a lot of times, or at least Romana, Romana, I believe, used to say straight spine, and she meant neutral. It feels like a straight spine. And that's why they use that, that's why that term was used, your straight spine. But they are referring to neutral. They are referring to your neutral spine. So when you're seated up nice and straight here, and you're trying to find your neutral spine from here, it's not going to look like this, where you have your rib cage forward and you have like you're creating. You don't want to feel like you're creating a curvature. You want to have your lower abs lifted up, your tailbone drop down. You'll have a little bit of a curve here. And again, it looks straight, but it's neutral, right? If you are thinking about, okay, if I was tucking the tail under and I was trying to have that flat spine on the mat, what would that look like seated up? That's going to look more like this, right? So you see the difference where I'm actually in a posterior tilt in the spine. So my pubic bone is reaching toward my face, right? So again, we do move through all of those spinal positions here, but the most important is finding your straight up and down, your neutral spine. And finding that on the mat is probably going to be the easiest place to start. And then you can always find that in the different positions. If you have any questions, or if any of these methods did not work for you, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and we can definitely, I can definitely help you find your neutral spine, because that is, of course, the most vital spinal position for you. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I hope this helps.